Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Monte Wolf with me, dGon, and Wolf, as we kicked off the 2025 LCK regular season. And, Wolf, I think we just have to go with the saying, the last will become first, because GenG T1 was the special treat that no one expected after a week of some ho-hum games. There were some pretty shit games this week. However, this GenG T1 regular season week 1 2025 match becomes the most viewed match of all time in the regular season with 1.58 million viewers. I looked it up. I think the previous records were like at 1.4 over at thanks to our friends over at esports charts. Here I'm looking at it right now. 152 was the previous record in summer 2023. Spring 2023 was 1.4. So there you have it, just right off the jump, just breaking records.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. Especially when you consider we've cut a lot of the downtime of the LCK. So oftentimes in the past, you'd have more time to find out that the match was happening and that it was hype, and get in. I think at this point, people just know this is the league to watch. They know that GenG and T1 have a great rivalry. There's obviously a lot of storylines there, and for a lot of people, I think that with all the T1 drama, there are people who want to see them fail. There are people who want to see them rise up and succeed. Guma is playing, right? So, T1 against DRX, you could sleep on that one. You could be like, I'm not interested. I already know what's going to happen. But like T1 versus GenG, that's the one you show up for. And it was cool that it happened at the end of the week. We got to have that really nice bookend. And showcase, I think, what the top level of the LCK is. Because if you watch some of the other games in the middle
Literally
of
the
the
match
week,
before.
yeah,
KT
you're
versus
kind of like,
T+.
well, it isn't that inspiring comparatively. I feel like we always say this, but there is such a huge gap between our top teams and even our middle teams. Like, it's just such a huge gap. In LCK Cup, it didn't feel that way as much. But now that teams have kind of figured out Fearless a little bit more and have figured out like what this year's map Rift is going to look like, how to play on Otacon a little bit more, etc. The gap is back. The gap is back, dGon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this T1 GenG series was unique for multiple different reasons. Obviously, Guma back on in. We talked on the show, the storyline. It was 17-17 head-to-head between Guma and Ruler. And Guma does get the play. He does not get subbed out. That was something we were wondering as well. KT in the series before subbed out their top laner, Perfect, for casting after what, four matches for casting. So you're thinking, well, we know there's a substitute behind him, and you skip past game 1. In game 2, Gumayusi did just kind of Valkyrie into the bot lane of GenG and give a double kill and create this standoff that basically lasted for 30 minutes before the game exploded into action again, because they couldn't do anything, could T1, because of the deficit there. It was GenG playing the first match of the week and then literally the very last match of the week, Wolf. And we talk about scheduling issues all the time during Worlds and playoffs, and does the layoff help? I don't think this has ever been done before. That is the craziest amount of time GenG still rise to the occasion.
It's also GenG playing against the defending champions in Hanwha first, so strength of schedule for them was incredibly hard, which is why, if you remember last week when we were talking about this, I predicted T1 to win this because I thought GenG was not necessarily going to be prepared. T1 had an easier first opponent. I thought, okay, it's Guma, Keria, they're going to get it done. And to a certain extent in this series they did, but to a certain extent there were moments where they did not. But I think, after watching GenG dismantle Hanwha, I've told everyone, like, ooh, that T1 Pred doesn't look like it's aging very well. But then the series ended up being really close. There's a few things I think we can really talk about here for both teams in terms of takeaways. because on the LCK cast and on the LCK desk, for the most part, we're all just hamming it up. Like, this is great, epic, awesome, it's the best. But like, there were problems,
Yeah.
and there were great things as well. Chovy's performance on Azir in particular, a little bit lackluster. I didn't think that he had bad team fights, but in the lane and some of the greedy plays he had in sides and also just his positioning in the mid lane, not respecting T1, got punished pretty hard. T1 did focus him super hard, obviously, as well, because he was a majority of their damage in that game, with his lethal tempo setup on the Azir, with the MF being the other damage dealer. So, it was a tough game to play out, but he didn't look great there. He looked much better on the Galio, and then obviously popped the fuck off in the last game, and blind blasts over the wall, and ends up getting the kill to actually end the game. So he had a pretty up and down performance today, but I think we can say, after watching his games against Hanwha and this series as a whole, that he's looking like he's pretty much back in peak form. Like, not quite there, but very close.
Yes, but here's what I take away from Chovy's performance, specifically on the Azir game. I like the word you used when you're describing it for people that watched it, didn't watch it. It was very greedy, because a lot of the times that he died in lane or side lane, he had knowledge of what was happening. They were on vision. He realized there was someone coming or someone there setting up in mid lane bush, and he was pushing the envelope, right? He was trying to bait out the gank and outplay the gank, and get a victory that way. And what I like about that is he's pushing the boundary. He's trying to find ways to affect the game other than sitting back and being the resource vacuum that then takes all that resource and then just destroys everyone at the end, which is literally what he did in the Victor game, right? We know he can do that. We know he's probably the best at doing that. So to see him play Azir and play it way more on the edge, and not just sit back and farm and give up some CS if you need to, because he is absorbing the pressure. He literally wanted to absorb cooldowns. He wanted to get flashes. He wanted to get ults and allow his team to still set up on the other side of the map. I like that. I personally like that.
It's reminiscent of how Faker plays Azir a lot of the
Yes.
time, so I thought it was pretty cool to see also, in the times he did get caught, how instantly, like, pixel perfect, just perfect reaction time, how well he was able to shuffle or Emperor's Divide and catch the person who was going for him. He was outnumbered both times where he got caught and ultimately died, but the reaction speed from him was insane. And they also got out of those two, with some help from his friends, two of those ganks that happened, Canyon helping him, and Duro helping him a little bit as well. But it was very fun to see how aggressively Faker played the Ahri, how comfortable he looked on a pick that he's always been very good at. And, with the new Ahri build that makes her so strong, how he was able to just take over that game completely. Guma also deathless in that first game. That T1 in that first game made it seem like, even with a draft that had some, questions about how it was going to scale into team fights later on, how well they could play that even into the late game very, very well, made you feel like, man, T1 might 2-0 this, and then in game 2, they have that incredible comeback where the incident happened with Guma, Ruler gets 2 kills, Doran tries to kill him, or it's 2 kills in the bottom lane, and then Ruler gets a second in the top lane when Doran tries to kill him and fails it, and Ruler just outplays him there. And then Ruler ends up kind of, falling asleep a little bit at the wheel and gets caught a few times, gets punished a few times. And then there was that moment where Chovy peels for him around the dragon after Keria had that amazing knockup, and Ruler just barely gets out, has his flash up, and then the taunt comes through to peel for him, and then he does end up popping off in that fight. It was a really fun game, just to see T1 come back there, but then GenG also still clutch it out. I think, the third game is the one people are going to remember the most about, how back and forth that was and how resilient T1 was, but also how GenG wouldn't make mistakes. Like, they wouldn't, they were not going to overextend. They were just let the minions do the work and play into T1's wave clear a little bit, but then just keep taking the objectives. Was just super fun to watch. I think that when I walk out of every single other series of the LCK, I feel like I go, well, one team didn't really show up, or like, there was a
Yep.
series that was determined by like one weird team fight at the end, and it wasn't like both of these teams played their best. I feel like this series, both teams played their best. Like, I think we saw what these teams are capable of right now in week one. I mean, they might even get stronger, obviously, or they might get weaker depending on what happens. But like, likely will continue to improve as the season goes on. Um, both of these teams played to their potential, and I don't feel like even like one player really didn't reach it. Like I guess maybe Doran, maybe Doran with the huge lead he had on the Jacks, like could have done more, but like it was one of those games where it's so tough to really gauge and assess that. But I felt like proud to be an LCK caster. Felt proud for this to be my region when like this is just a regular season game that's this hype, that's this high level, that's this well played out by both sides. Whereas for the rest of the week, I really didn't. For the rest of the week, I was like, damn, we won first stand easy with this team. Like,
Yeah, that was also a very fun shtick getting to do that with you and with Dan whenever or Ox whenever he was on the desk. I think yeah, like when you look at all three games, every single player had a standout game. Every player did. Guma on the Jin, Faker on the Ari in game with Doran on Gwen. Like Doran was potential player of the series candidate. And then we flip on over to game two, not so much on the Embessies. And again, not fully his fault. I think that was the big oopsie by Guma, despite his score line at 3-2 and 10. It was his doing that created this game state where they were just stiff and could not do
yeah.
anything until Ruler made a mistake. Also, Ruler making the mistake, but then getting the redemption. Actually, in that fight, the game-winning fight, we like to call it, he did not have flash because it was still down from originally when Owner jumped on him in the mid lane when he stepped up
Oh,
on a
that's
wave
right.
that
Yeah,
he wasn't supposed to step
you
up.
are right.
He
You are right. It was
literally
just an arcane
shifted
shift.
away. And then
Yeah.
and he had a barrier, and Guma was in a tough spot because it's either I can chase Ruler and kill him for sure, or I see the pop up here and I need to hit like everyone that carry is knocking up. And when he shifted back, thinking maybe we'll be able to burst down Chovy, maybe we'll be able to burst down Canyon. Canyon gets the kill. Ruler comes back on in. I mean, it was just so fast. Like they were playing at, you know what it felt like? It felt like, all right, we're watching DK and KT, and it's like, okay, it's Yamcha against Krillin, and like we're able to keep up with it, and then all of a sudden Vegeta and Goku start fighting, and it's like, oh my god, T1 GenG, they're playing so fast, but it's not like messy fast. It was just beautiful. It's beautiful to watch. It's beautiful to get breakdowns and replays.
It's crazy. You kind of have to like go slow motion to see everything.
Yeah.
And even in the chaos, I like it. You just point. I forgot that Ruler didn't have flash, and it was just an arcane shift. But even though I literally cast that game yesterday, there was so much to remember.
There was so much, dude. There was so much.
I mean, the fact that Carrier was even able to hit a keeper's verdict onto an Ezreal, and get into a position to actually make that happen is wild. Like that is not an easy thing to do. Owner's got the follow, like if Carrier misses that, then the fight could look completely different anyways, and T1 wouldn't necessarily even try to go in, right? But like it's just little things like that like most supports could never even find that angle. And Carrier found that angle, and it still wasn't enough because GenG played it well, and Jovi comes in, he sets up the taunt, right? Like it was just one of those games where you sit back in a chair and you go, wow, like everybody is really playing high level League of Legends, and I think most people who watch the LCK regularly and most people who have been listening to us talk and have like really strong opinions on all these players on T1 felt like T1 was going to be a top team despite their result. I think a lot of people who are casual watchers of the LCK or didn't see that T1 was at first stand and looked up the bracket and saw where they fell and saw that their placement finished and that they placed lower than Nongshim. There were some people who were like, I guess T1 just isn't good now and it's Smash's fault or whatever because they just don't watch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think most people who are fans of T1 or fans of the LCK, even if people who are not fans of T1 who are fans of the LCK, knew this team was going to be good this season. But I think this really solidified it. You know what I mean? This was like, okay, T1 is a legit top contender, maybe even for top 2.
So two guys we need to put in the magnifying glass here. Let's start positive. Just because I think there was such a very, very clear, I think, target on this person's back, especially after LCK Cup. I mean, honestly, you could say that about both of them. I think Duro had himself a series here. The Rakan, I think what did was very critical of the Rakan, saying like, hey, you don't see it because he missed a couple of these grand entrances, but it didn't lead to anything. But those were game-winning plays that he missed. Whereas back on the Nautilus, and obviously like constant pressure by the Blitzcrank, which neutralized one of the most oppressive bot lanes we have in the LCK, Guma Carrier on Caitlyn plus blank, Caitlyn whatever, this time it was Bard. I think, and then also we got to hear in game 2 as they were doing the final push to the Nexus, he yelled at Ruler for getting caught in the mid lane. It was like, okay, Duro is made for this. What did you feel about Duro's performance?
I think he's improving a lot. He's definitely finding his confidence. And that's an issue a lot of players are going to have when they're not only moving into the LCK, but also moving into a roster of this caliber. It takes some time to feel like you're part of the team, like to feel like you're one of the elites on this roster when you're still so young and you're still so inexperienced, and you're sitting next to Ruler. And and like Ruler is telling you what to do, even though it's your job to tell him what to do because you're the support. That's when at the beginning you can have some, I don't want to say doubt, but like you certainly don't feel like when Ruler is yelling and you don't agree with him that you're ready to tell him he's wrong right away.
Yeah.
And you're not willing to tell Ruler like, hey, actually, like I think they might be there, like back up and stuff like that when he's trying to farm super hard. So eventually though, and you're also worried that like if you engage and you mess it up, or if you engage and you misjudge the situation and you die and the Ruler is upset with you, that like it might affect your relationship for like the next week in scrims and stuff like that. So at the beginning you're not sure if your team trusts you yet. I think even if Ruler did trust him from day one 100%, like it's hard to know that. It's hard to feel like that you've earned that when you're sitting next to such a veteran. So I think we've gotten to the point now where I feel like he does think that he's part of the team. Like he does think that the rest of his teammates are equals to him because they're all just a 5-man team. I'm sure inside, like, deep down, he knows that he hasn't accomplished what these players have yet, and he's not the same as them. But I feel like he thinks that they treat him as an equal, and he thinks that like he can make those kind of jokes, and he can, be trusted to make engages and stuff. So he does. And like at the beginning of the year, I felt like there were a few moments where he either completely whiffed the engages or went in at the wrong time or went in late when the rest of his team was going in expecting him to engage, and he didn't trust himself. And like that seems to be less of the case right now. I think there's still some nerves for this guy for sure. Like this is his first big T1 match that he had for the year. Like he played against Hanwha and then went to a finals, for example, but this is kind of a different beast. This is the rivalry matchup. This is the first big matchup of the year. And he didn't play perfectly, but it's still a big upgrade from LCK Cup, I'd say, as a whole.
Duro joining Wraith, Core, Life, Lahens, and Missing as this just being part of a duo with Ruler. I feel like that's a pretty crazy list of guys to have been played with, other than maybe Wraith. Sorry, Wraith. But not easy to kind of join into that partnership, because I think of other like great 80 carries and they've just that have been playing as long as Ruler, and that list is way longer than just 6 players. But yeah, great to see Duro's growth and the growth of this bot lane. And we go to the other side. So Guma had a great Jin game, and we get to see that champion diversity that he's able to provide into game number 1. He has, I mean, they're brought in to win lane. Ezreal Corki, Corki gets maybe some push early on against Ezreal. But
I
that
feel
wasn't
like
so
they
great.
just Yeah, I feel like they just underestimated the damage that Israel can put out, and then really kept chipping away, and Guma would go in to try to trade back, and it's like, well, you lost too much health, you can't win this one.
Yeah.
Like when they went in and died, 2v2 the first time, it was pretty like that was a pretty hard to defend decision, based on
Yeah.
the like health bars they had when they went in, and like obviously Keria is playing Poppy, and Poppy does a lot of damage actually in the early levels as well. And if you get that lockdown onto the 80 carry, and Corki is like Gatlin gunning him, like sure. But Ruler had barrier, and he used it at the end, and they were able to get the set of kills there, and that was kind of not great. And then Guma misplayed some of the fights on his Caitlyn, and played really aggressively and got punished a few times, or was playing too safe and didn't actually layer damage in when he needed to. And he missed a lot of Caitlyn traps, actually, was the weird thing. Like, there were a lot of traps that he just either didn't place or completely whiffed, which on CC'd targets, which is,
On
you
tempered
know,
faded targets. Like
yeah,
it goes back to
you can't miss
what Did
it.
was
Like, it's
saying about
impossible to
the
miss.
Yeah, well, it goes back to what Did was saying about the Duro mistakes on Rakan. They weren't game losing mistakes, but you're missing opportunities to be game winning or fight changing traps onto people, and they were able to flash away or whatever it was. It was just so
You're essentially just
not
like
what
not
you
even utilizing
expect.
your kit. I mean, you're not utilizing
Yeah,
your kit. One of the biggest things about Caitlyn is that she can always trap anyone who's immobilized for any reason. That's part of why Caitlyn Lux is so strong. I mean, Lux has really strong wave clear and push, which helps you then, she ease a minion wave, and then you peacemaker it, and then it's done. You got all the money, and you shoot far, and you push people. But like, also, if you hit a binding, they're trapped after that, and they're likely dead, or are gonna have to like flash away. And they're gonna be down to like 10% health, and you've won the lane. So it's that kind of duo that's incredibly strong. The trap is such a huge part of the kit, and you should be able to trap someone who is, for example, even shoved. That one's a little bit trickier than tempered fate, but like you can do it. You should be able to trap someone who's caught in a glacial prison, if you're in range, obviously, and like uh he just wasn't hitting all the traps. I mean, not to say that he missed every single one of them, but like there were some big moments that he had where he didn't trap someone to then obviously do a ton of follow-up damage there and prevent their
yeah.
escape. And in the laning phase, like he did fine, but it wasn't this giga oppressive, Caitlyn game that we've come to expect, and in part due to Duro, who had some really nice plays there as well. But like, uh, I'm not impression farming right now, like a lot of people did after the series, who were like, "Man, get him out! It's the worst thing ever. Smash wins these, blah blah blah."
I saw
I'm
I
not even
saw
gonna name
multiple
any
people hitting
names.
smash wins these.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna name any names, but like there were some people who posted this where I was like, you know better, like come on. Then there was a lot of people posting where I was like, oh, this guy would post anything for a like, so yeah, of course he doesn't know better. But I do think that while Guma's performance was not perfect by any means, um, we don't know how Smash would have performed here. We know
Nope.
Smash plays Caitlyn also, and like maybe he would have played a little bit better in that final game. Who knows? But I feel like this series is not the series. This is not the series to be like, oh, Guma needs to go. It's his second series of the tournament, and it was against GenG, and he had a pretty dominant performance. If you guys remember in the DRX series, he looked very good. He looked like he was ready to prove something in that series. Obviously different caliber of opponent, but until we see Guma, end up like really just he's either hit a ceiling and he's not playing, he's not actually pushing the boundaries anymore, or we see him botch a game against like KT next week, for example, where it's like, oh, you cannot lose this series, and Guma like somehow throws lane against Duckdom or something.
Yeah.
Then we can pull the trucks out. Then we can be like, man, get Smash back in there. I also think that Smash deserves a few starting games if they want to play it towards Smash's champion pool a little bit more. Like, I think that you absolutely can start him. There's no reason why you can't play double 80 carry here, but lane swaps are dead. It felt like a good time to play Guma. We already talked about all the PR shit last week, so if you want to see our opinions on all that, just go back and watch last week's episode. We talked a lot about it. But I don't think that now is the time to call for a replacement, but I do think we can acknowledge some of the issues that were there, and now you and I have, but it wasn't to me what defined the series. Like, it really wasn't. I think to some people who want to impression farm, they'll say it was, but for me, I don't think it was.
All I'll say, not that I'm impression farming or anything, is that Smash did play against GenG, and he did beat GenG 2-1. All right, I just, those traps,
There
obviously
you
don't trap
go. Oh, but I bet
themselves.
that tweet gets at least like 1,000 likes and at least 100 responses.
Yeah.
Well
Oh,
played,
sure.
dGon.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Thank you.
I did
Facts.
see that exact
Factual.
tweet actually multiple times, like what you just said just there.
All right.
Because he
Well,
won last time, so therefore there was no way that if he played this time, they would not win this time.
yeah, well, how many
Obviously.
world championships has Smash won? He hasn't won any, so you should shut up, you idiot. You don't know anything. um I like the fact that they used Guma. I'm disappointed that Guma didn't have as much of a pop-off moment. And also, I think people's normal bias, like what you said, going back just to wrap it up, but going back to the top of what you said is everyone played well. And so there isn't an easy finger to point. Almost every game you can be like, "Ah, yeah. Doo-doo in the top lane, not so good. Sorry, DNF." Like, like you can point to someone in this game, not so much. Everyone had their ups and downs, and it just felt like it's a great series out of nowhere for no
Yeah.
reason other than the
It,
fact that it's GenG versus T1.
imagine the how you'd feel though as T1, the W, if you actually win this series. And
Oh,
imagine if they actually, with that last team fight, play it a little bit better and actually do win and win the game somehow with that deficit. And it's, by the way, I don't think they would have been able to win inside. I think they would have had to win another fight, but they would have had a ton of agency. Like, if they had wiped fully, maybe they just instantly win, obviously, at that point. But like, with the scrappiness of the fight, like maybe they can push a few turrets in, but then like their base defended, the inhibitors are back up, etc. Anyway, imagine if, with all the drama right now, with all the Joe Marsh hate, with the Ashley Kong video that just came out, and like the fans still arguing about Guma versus Smash and still wondering why they didn't get Zeus, if you just come out of the gate swing and beat GenG, who looked like the best team of the week by far, like how cool that would have been for the T1 org and for the T1 fans. But I think for the org especially, to just be like, well, you know what? Everyone's mad about stuff, but we fucking won.
yeah,
That
but
would have been sick.
that's what cures everything. Winning cures everything.
Yeah,
And
but they didn't win,
unfortunately for
so
them, they didn't win. And so now it's kind of interesting to see what the fan sentiment is going to be. Again, as you brought up the just the Ashley Kong video and the Joe Marsh drama, we're not going to dive into that too much. You can go look at Ashley Kong has made some statements
yeah,
about
I
Joe
need a
Marsh and
break
about
from T1
T1.
drama on this show.
Yeah.
I'm taking a break this week. Okay, if there's some more drama next week, we'll get into it. But like, I'm sick of it, dGon. FM
I
Korea,
know.
hello.
It would Evan Korea, hello. We
FM
see
Korea's
you.
looking for it. They're like, hold on, are they doing it? I'm like, no, not this week. You don't have to translate this episode. It's fine.
Yeah, but we are acknowledging you. Hello. It's just the T1 world, and we're living it, especially after a series like that. Congrats to GenG. Great. Hats off to T1. I didn't watch the interviews, the post-game interviews, but they're posted up on Reddit and on the YouTube channel. And I think I mean, both coaches are just smiling. Like, that's the thumbnail. They're smiling. So, like, I think they both knew the gravity of maybe not the gravity of these matches, but the epicness of these matches, win or lose. And it's the type of game that, as a coach, you're kind of just proud to have. And like you said, as a caster, myself as a host, just being part of it, I'm just proud to be a part of this ecosystem and getting to storytell it. All right, GenG and T1. What a way to kick things off here. You know, when you were done, Wolf, I will say that you looked a little warm, maybe a little sweaty in those seersucker insurance salesman looking orange, like popsicle orange and I don't know, icy blue suits you and Atlas were, and you probably were a little sweaty. You know, maybe a little stinky. Is that is
I
that a
was
fair
all right.
statement?
I'll pull back the curtain. I'll break the fourth wall. Man, when I was done with that series, I was sweating, and you guys probably couldn't really see. And I know they like replayed the ending of me and Atlas like on the caster desk, and like it wasn't like if I took my jacket off, like I'd be like there'd be like giant stains level of sweat, but like I was pretty sweaty, and I went into the changing room. We, the little caster changing room after that, and took off my like white, button up shirt, and I smelled it, and I was like, I didn't wear Mando today, and I did not, and from now on, I will definitely be using my 72-hour protection, and I think I'm gonna, because I have a few of these, I think I might actually bring one of these and put it in my bag just in case I have another banger I have to cast that goes 50 minutes. And I'm screaming and yelling, and it's super hot in the arena because there's a ton of fans who are also yelling and screaming and jumping out of their seats, and we're right next to them. Gets hot in there, gets sweaty, and it's not even summer yet. And it's gonna get worse. It's gonna get hotter. It's gonna be tougher. And Lol Park sometimes it gets too cold actually when they blast the AC to full. But there are on majority of the days it's actually just too hot in there when you're sitting on the casting desk. But yeah, this is one of the things that comes with the starter pack you can get from Mando. There's a bunch of different types of deodorant and creams that you could use. So if you want to use, this is obviously like a standard stick of deodorant that you can use for your armpits or wherever you want. But there's a lot of different other types you can use for some of your less talked about places that smell. And there's also body wash, which is really nice that I enjoy to use. So the starter pack is great. And if you're thinking about, being like, well, I'm not too happy with my deodorant right now, and I'm looking for something a little bit more versatile, recommend you check it out.
Boom. We got you covered. The starter pack is perfect for new customers. Comes with solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice. And as a special listener for customers, get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code Monte Wolf. That equates to 40% off your starter pack using the code Monte Wolf at shopmando.com. That's SHOPMANDO.com. I mean, he smelled his shirt and it smelled bad. You can imagine what his Grundle smelled like. And don't be like Wolf with that stinky shirt Grundle combo. Head on over to shopmando.com. Get the code Monte Wolf for $5 off your starter pack. Thanks to our friends over at Mando. That was just as soon as you were like, oh man, I'm sweating. I was like, I know what I'm talking about tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I had the same thing. And luckily for me, and luckily for everyone around me, I just went and got on my bike and drove home, and I wasn't in a crowded subway train like some of the other casters who had to go home after that one.
That would have been brutal.
I wasn't the only sweaty one after that, but yeah, it was. The KR casters all were coming out. It was one of the bangers of all time. It was one of the ones where you're not walking away from that one without a few drips.
I love the fact that like after game 1 we were like, oh shit, this is something special. And then by the end of it all, finding out that it breaks records for the most watched game, it's like people heard. Obviously people show up to watch like GenG T1, but then people on top of that heard, oh shit, this is a good GenG T1, and then they got treated to that type of series. But part of the reason why that series was that great was because GenG beat the shit out of Hot Life at the beginning of the week. It wasn't close. It's 28 minutes. And then I think 29 minutes. It wasn't even an hour of gameplay between Hanwha and GenG. The opening ceremony with the Rocks Tigers coming on out for Hanwha was probably the best they looked in that series. 24-2, 24-14. Those were the kill scores. Like, it was brutal.
It was, I mean, looking back at the drafts as well, it was the Peanut Nefiri game, which was, I kind of forgot about that one. That one was really not it, although it's pretty tough to play Nefiri and Devi. And I think Nefiri is overrated and she's getting nerfed moving into week 2, so I think that we could stop being like, why is she bad? She's really good, I promise. Like everyone, I feel like that everyone was Emperor's New Clothing a little bit on this, like being like, I can see the Nefiri is amazing, and I'm like, I'm not sure. It's not really looking good in team fights. It's really bad KDAs most games. Its win rate's abysmal.
Yeah.
And everyone is a little bit of like, the Nefiri is super broken. She has to be banned here. I'm like, actually, are we sure about that? But you know, Canyon had a good Nefiri game at the end. Lucid had a game that he won on Nefiri, but he stole an objective. But I think he could have done that on any champion. Anyway. Less about the Fury, more about Hanwha. They looked bad. They looked really lost in that first series, and unfortunately, GenG just dismantled them, and it was not fun. And I was expecting that this series could have also been a banger, like the T1 series ended up being, just because of what happened in the finals. Went to 5. Like these two teams played super close against each other. I think Hanwha had some elements of hangover from the first stand tournament, not necessarily because they didn't practice after they won, which is often the case where you don't you're not like super focused up in your scrims and stuff because you're trying to improve. Like a lot of the time, if you had a bad tournament, you're more into the scrims. You're more like, okay, how can we win? How can we get better? I don't think it was that necessarily as much as it was in first stand. They may have developed some bad habits. Like Ox was kind of memeing this a little bit, being like, oh, they only played against bad teams for a while, and so like they forgot how to play. But I kind of do feel like how they played first stand and how they drafted for that is not the kind of way you need to be drafting and thinking and mindset wise playing into GenG. And they like put Zeka on Victor. And that's not, we've talked about how Zeka's champion pool has gotten a lot bigger, but that one's not quite on the
Too
list
big.
for me just yet. Yeah, that's a little bit too fringe for his play style. I think it was in part Hanwha playing badly, but also we know how good GenG is based on what they showed us against T1 as well. But right now, I kind of feel like this series made me feel overall that I would put T1 higher than Hanwha right now. I would put Hanwha in 3rd place in terms of my power rankings after week 1.
Ooh. No, I agree.
I think you kind of
think,
have to, right?
Yeah, you have to, because it wasn't just the GenG game, it's also the KT series as well, which was like, all right, here's the bounce back series. Should be nice and easy. 2-0, nothing to see here. KT still doofing around with Peter coming into the roster. And then later on, they subbed in casting for Perfect. Obviously, we didn't know that yet. But, this should be easy, done, and dusted. And it wasn't the case. BDD just got to sit back on Tristana and be the superhero of the team like he always is. And we've seen great teams try to neutralize that. Again, what T1 did to GenG, where they're like, hey, you get to play Zero, that's fine. We're going to send so many people at you during the windows that we have to attack, and we're going to punish you. That's not what Hanwha did at all. And I feel like that's when you look at the roster of KT, Perfect, because BDD, Duck Dumb, Peter, there's one person you're afraid of. It's not Duck Dumb. It's not Duck Dumb. And
if you're
so,
a KT
like,
fan, you're afraid of Duck Tom, I think.
yeah. So I think maybe it was a little bit of, hey, we show up, we're better than them. Let's do our basics. We don't necessarily have to game plan specifically to the other team. And I think that's a little bit of lackluster strategic planning for Hanwha, not just the players themselves, because I would say with the GenG game, it was really hard to get any takeaways, because the game, as soon as Peanut locked into Fury, we all knew it was going to be bad, but then it was really bad because of that issue. So the game capitulated out of control. And then in game 2, like what you said, brought up Zeka in something where he doesn't have as much agency to play make. He's trying to play the farm back, give me the resources so I can kill you later. And that's normally not him either. He's the playmaker. He gets in your face. He makes the plays. Give him Silas. He looks great.
Well,
And so it's
not
not a
so much
lot
in that.
of yeah,
Not so much in
yeah,
that KT series though, but yeah, Silas is
definitely
not
not.
great there.
Definitely
um,
not. So I just wonder if give them this week to be like, okay, we're back in the LCK. We can't just dick around our strategies. Let's see. And we get a pretty good look at it next week when they play T1. And now we have that very clear 1-2-3 by the end of week 2.
what I'll say about Hanwha, you know, is there's kind of a pattern, even though some rosters have changed, some players have changed. There's kind of a pattern with this team. Like even if you look back at the LCK Cup, this trend was the same where they're kind of slow starters. In that like they ramp up towards the playoffs is where they like really reach their peak. And we've even seen this in years past. Like even like the Klid roster back in the day. I know
Ooh.
he who shall not be named. Like when you think back to that Hanwha Life roster, we were like, oh man, they've got some good players, but like, why are they making bad decisions? Like their mid games are awful. Like their early games are rocky, but like sometimes they have good team fights. But by the end, they're like, okay, we're scaling. We're a team that plays through our 80 carry, and we're not gonna just try to hyper play aggressive, try to look for hard engages with Klid and try to win the game early and snowball like GenG does. Like that's not who we are. We're more of a slower team. They kind of figured that out like by the end of the season. And we saw some cool upsets from them later on. They didn't end up winning the title or anything. They didn't reach the peaks then that they did obviously last summer and at the beginning of this year. But this team often does kind of figure out. I think it's in part due to the coaching staff really trying a lot of stuff early and then kind of like slotting into a play style later on. But some of the stuff that it's not even about like prep, it's not about bad drafting. Like the fight that comes to mind for me for the KT series that I was most disappointed on was when they like were on Otacon. I don't know if you remember the specific fight. I was casting it, so it's in my mind. They were on Otacon and they just Peanut goes in on the Wukong, like he cyclones and tries to set the engage, and everybody just jumps into Peter's Pop Blossom range, and he just Pop Blossoms
Oh,
all of them, and then
yeah.
they like lose the fight, and it's just like the game is over. And like at that moment, Peter didn't have flash, and he's like, "How am I going to figure out? How am I going to find my way in? They're on Otacon. How can I get to them and set up this engage?" And then all of them were just like, "Let me do it for you. Here we go." And they just go straight in, and even like confused Atlas because he was like, "Wait, whose Pop Blossom was that? Like, what's
Yeah,
going
because
on?"
Zeka was playing Silas. It's like there's no reason to do
Yeah.
that unless obviously Zeka has Pop Blossom, or if you guys are inting. And so I think his brain did that and was like, okay, how do I say this without saying Will I just inted into Peter?
Yeah, no, I
It's a
mean
very funny moment.
Peanut could have just held his Cyclone and tried to defensively set it up when the collapse came through, and they didn't have to engage. Like they had so much insane turn when KT got there, but they like went in way too early and didn't actually use their positional advantage. It's moments like that where you're like, okay, brain's not working well here together. They made the call together, okay, but like the call was completely incorrect. And to watch a international champion, LCK champion, LCK Cup championship roster just like make a like Nongshim BNK like DRX level decision is like, wait, come on, guys. Like
No,
how did you
no.
win all those championships if you're making decisions like this? And that's why you know that it was probably just an off day, right? That's how you know they haven't been super locked in scrims probably. I don't think that's the main reason, but I do feel like that may be part of this. But it's losses like that and losses like the loss to GenG that make you spend days like today in your scrim block being like, all right, like let's focus up. We made some really bad choices. Let's not make those choices again.
Yeah, I mean, you named all the teams except the one team I know actually did do that, which were my bros, who legit on Xinjiao engaged onto Alistair, just got fucking destroyed. Oh my
It's so
god!
brover. We are not back.
It's
We are not back,
well,
dGon.
we have a brand new battle of the week. DN Freaks against the Bros next week after they both get demolished by I think it's Hanwha and D plus respectively. Um, they play on the same day that I think T1 plays Hanwha. So, you know, get the appetizer out of the way before you get the full course meal. Let me triple check that. But anyways, those are our thoughts on Hanwha. wait and see mode, international hangover mode. We'll find out. No, it's GenG Nongshim, the battle for the top of the leaderboard. That's what we get first. Or that's what we get afterwards. All right. Well, the reigning champs need to spend a little bit of time listening to each other. And you know who else you should listen to? Your parents, specifically your mother, because Mother's Day is coming up. And moms are always on the go, juggling work, family, and everything in between. And this Mother's Day, to help her listen to some of the favorite things to help her relax, learn with podcasts kind of like this, maybe make crystal clear calls, we got our friends over at Raycon with the Everyday Earbuds. Now, Raycon's Everyday Earbuds are the perfect gift for your mom, whether she's hitting the gym, busy with work, or taking one of the many phone calls she habitually puts on speaker every day, because that's what moms do. Give your mom the gift of premium audio that goes anywhere where she does. And the latest model is better than ever with the 32-hour battery life and multi-point connectivity that allows her to pair with 2 devices at once. She'll never ask you for Bluetooth help again. And again, two Wolf anecdotes for today's partners of the show. Wolf famously lost his Raycon earbuds, kind of like mine. I lost my Raycon Everyday Earbuds, and then I bought another pair. But then Wolf, as he was scavenging around his bag, finds his earbuds, and also they still were charged.
Yeah,
Like,
dude, this was
it was
actually
crazy.
insane. They were missing for maybe 2.5 to 3 weeks, I want to say.
I was gonna
I
say it was
didn't
a
know where they
while.
were. I didn't know where they were. And like I have a ton of stuff in my bag. Like I've got my giant old like 2014 iPad Pro, like the huge one. I have 2 notebooks in there. I've got my Switch in there. I've got a bunch of pens and pencils. Sometimes I have snacks in there, you know, like if it's one of those days where I think I'm going to need one. There's just a lot in there. They were shoved down underneath, I think, a packet of makeup removal wipes that I like pulled out to use, and then I was like, wait, they're here? Because I checked the bag like twice to try to find them. I don't know how I didn't find them before, but anyway, I found them and I pulled them out, and it's still charged. It still has the charging icon opened up to put them in, and they worked. It was crazy. Yeah, the battery life on these is pretty insane, but the standby battery life, you know, I knew it was good, but I wasn't prepared for how long those things last. So yeah, durable earbuds that will like not take damage if you put them in your back pocket, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Like those things will they'll last you.
Yeah, they definitely will. They've got themselves the active noise cancellation, which is great for on the go when I don't want to listen to people on the subway. Boom, no problem. Head on over to buyraycon.com/M&W to get 20% off site-wide. That's right. Raycon is offering 20% site-wide when you go to buyraycon.com/M&W. That's buyraycon.com/M&W for 20% off. Check out all the cool colors that they have for the headphones. Get yours today. Thanks to our friends over at Raycon. Oh, man. I love it when the plan comes together. Thanks for losing your earbuds and then finding it right on time. Time
Of
to talk
course.
about teams that aren't GenG, T1, and Hanwha Life Esports. Surprises.
No,
Like
let's not talk about them.
Nongshim at
Goodbye, everyone. Thanks
first.
for watching.
All right. Yeah, that was it.
No,
Nongshim at first is just a product of the strength of schedule, but it's fun. It's fun. It's fun to say. It's fun to think. It's fun to dream. Again, if LCK Cup standings were who we sent to Worlds, fucking Nongshim's going to Worlds. It's so crazy.
Yeah. But they did, however, play against DN Freaks and Bro. Teams that will play against each other next week.
One of them's got to win.
I guess so. Nongshim looked pretty good. Kingen is in still pretty decent form, I think. Lehens is making plays all over the place, which is what we've come to expect from him at this point. And Gideon, actually a good player, strong player. actually legitimate, not a fraud, actually real. So I don't know how to like fully categorize Nongshim right now. I feel like they're a team that is solid fifth place potentially, and maybe has a ceiling of maybe getting to top four. It reminds me kind of like D plus of a few years ago, where you're like, wow, this roster is really strong. Like Deft is on this team. It's gonna be great. And then like they disappoint you in the big series, but like they're a strong team and they beat all the weaker teams, but like when it comes to being the upper echelon, they struggle. I think that's kind of where we're gonna be at with Nongshim. Like I don't think they're gonna be beating Hanwha or T1 or GenG, but I feel like they absolutely can beat anyone else, and they may struggle against D plus, like D plus might beat them, but not necessarily. They might struggle against KT on KT's best day, but for the most part, they seem like they're somewhere in the upper echelon, like, and form on the day will dictate whether they beat D plus. If they do, then I guess they could just be our fourth best team, which is kind of crazy, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. And D plus aren't looking so hot themselves right now, so it is fun to dream big for the Noodle Boys and to feel like it's not just a meme. Like this team is actually good. They were successful in part due to the LCK Cup format, and they got the easier matchup, so they got top four. But they like earned, I feel like, a lot of praise based on how they played those playoff games and almost beat GenG. Almost super close, but not quite able to do it. And I think Nongshim, as much as it's a meme that they're in first place and their strength of schedule was easy, I do think they have it in them to compete at a legend group level. I actually think that they at the moment, have a pretty good chance of contesting for that spot.
Yeah, because I think it's them, DRX. Like, I think KT is just exploding before our eyes. Like, BDD resigns his extension, he gets Cuz back, and it's like, holy shit, we've swapped bot, we swapped support, we've swapped top. We just don't have a sub for a Duck Dom. Like, what are we doing? And so the KT, who has just constantly been like almost there, has taken the midfield step back while DRX and Nongshim take the step forward.
KT Rolster, look, I've created my headcanon for how I can be okay with the fact that they loaned Hype and took Duck Dom instead. Is like maybe they had to pay BDD so much money that they're like, all right, I'm gonna put a price tag on Hype so we can keep BDD, because BDD has been in jail. Okay, he has been in KT Rolster jail, and it's not okay anymore. He needs a real team. His performances individually, especially when you look at some of his KDAs and his damage numbers when KT get absolutely giga blasted by a team, and you're like, damn, how did BDD still do so much? Like, he won that one team fight for them. They still lost the game, but like he's still trying. He's still making it happen while the rest of his team is constantly tripping over their shoelaces. He's doing it. And like, remember, BDD almost brought this team to Worlds last year. And like, it's like, oh, surely he'll get a team. Surely he'll find a spot. The problem is like the top teams have, like GenG has Chovy, never going to replace him. T1 Faker, the only person I'd say is even more irreplaceable to an org. Hanwha has Zeka, who's now kind of their franchise player. I feel like you could have replaced Zeka with BDD if you wanted to make that choice, But like, there's no reason to force that when you already have some pre-existing synergy. Why would Hanwha do that? Yeah. And then you have D Plus's franchise player and Dom1's franchise player forever has been Showmaker. So even though I think BDD would be an upgrade, you don't replace him. So he just is stuck in KT, even though he's an incredible mid laner. But like, there's nowhere for him to go. You know what I mean? Like, there's nowhere for him to go. Monte and I used to talk about this on the show, that he would probably be the most likely and most it makes the most sense for him to be Faker's successor if Faker suddenly retired, right? Like, when Faker's injury, we talked about this a lot back then because Faker's injuries were looking quite severe, and it looked like maybe Faker, it looked unlikely to retire, but like the discussion was happening back then. Now we're like, that's not even in the realm of possibility.
Especially because after we saw Pooby. Sorry, Poby.
But I mean, like, BDD, maybe if like Faker or Chovy retired, you know, or were involved in a scandal and like had to step down. Like if the unthinkable that we can't even imagine happened, like BDD could get to a better team. Like he'd be like, get BDD a team, but there just isn't a team for him. Unless D Plus wanted to drop Showmaker, for example, you know, like which they wouldn't, or Hanwha wanted to drop Zeka, which doesn't make sense. So like I feel so bad for this player who spent such a long time in his career trying to carry, and even in his time in GenG, he almost got them out of that semifinals, and then unfortunately put them in the bigger hole and they didn't make it out to go to the finals. But anyway, he then had to go to like Nongshim and play on that train wreck disaster of a team. Then almost got KT in part through him to go to the LCK finals on KT, and then almost went to Worlds, and like now it's just he's like
the tragedy.
Really? Duckdown, really?
He's a Greek tragedy.
Yes, it's not fair.
Is Perfect still up there? I think you brought up they had hype, headhunter hype over on Bros. Also, they had to do something with that roster for the challengers, the KT challengers. They had so many players that had won. They'd won challengers. They were clearly the top of challengers, which included Perfect, which is why he got the shot to do it.
And also Wei, who did not look great, but he looked good in challengers.
Hambach, right? Like all of that core got a shot, and unfortunately, some of the shots got pulled a little too fast. Wei was definitely one of the issues on KT, but when it's a 2-lane thing, it feels really bad when like Ducktop still looks like shit with Peter. Peter definitely looks like better, just more decisive. You could tell Peter's like, I don't care what you say, Duckdom. Whereas like Wei was like, what should I do, Duckdom? And he wasn't helping him. And then he's like, bench his ass, give me Peter. And now Peter's like, bench his ass, give me an 80, give me Wei, or give me hype. What I wish would have happened was, and we talked about offline, the rumblings when 2-time MVP of the LCS, Berserker, was like, hey, I'm done with Cloud9. I really thought he was going to KT. There were rumors that he was the guy.
I think he definitely had talks with them.
I just think this team would have been so different, because we look at the DN Freaks. It's a mess. It's just a mess. And he said nice things about Life, and we went through the fact that Life played with Ruler for such a long time on GenG. He doesn't look good. This KT roster all of a sudden has firepower again. It's not just BDD doing shit. It allows Cuz to play through a lane that isn't just like constantly dealing with performance anxiety in the top lane or its support. Like, I think that would have been just an insane roster. We have 5 great teams, maybe 6 great teams with Nongshim. I don't know, but instead we just have parts like floating in the bottom 4.
I think probably the reason why Duckdom is on this team is he's probably one of the cheapest people who have experience that they could get. And, you know, Wei, while having a lot of experience or a lot of success in challengers, still is relatively inexperienced in terms of the LCK. We've seen most players who promote into the LCK just get shit stomped on when they get into the LCK. As much as Chronicler has hyped them, like most players just adjust poorly. There are great exceptions, such as Shu, or not Clear, by the way. Clear was he had some moments, but then mostly like wasn't great. But Lucid, that was the one I was trying to say. Shu and Lucid are great examples of players who promoted from challengers and found great success almost instantly. I mean, Lucid had some growing pains, but was a lot more successful than Wei to start things off. And Hype also hasn't, had his consistency found yet. But anyway, it must be that Duckdom was just like, we need a veteran to kind of help Wei along like through the tougher parts of LCK. Duckdom's had a really long career, but he's not looking so hot right now, so we can probably get him for pretty cheap. That's what I assume happened. And then they're like, we can make a small profit off renting Hype. That's again, my assumption is that they're actually making some monetary gain off of this. As Bro doesn't have a ton of money, but like they needed an 80 carry bad, right? And maybe with the results that they had recently, they were like, we've got to make a commitment to going for something like this. And Duckdom is weirdly enough, I feel like we've had so many 80 carries in the past that have been even worse than Duckdom. Like Envy has had worse performances for a year. Henna at the beginning of his career was really rough. Like he definitely turned it around, but those players like never really got hate. Like they didn't really get that much criticism from fans. Maybe people just didn't care about them. But man, is Duckdom like by far the most criticized player in the LCK right now. And there are a lot of players I think who are doing much worse. Not necessarily in the 80 carry role, but just in general. I feel like the hate is somewhat overblown. But when you think about what it could be in hype or Berserker, as you mentioned, who was nearly picked up, it's like when KT almost got scout, you know, and you're like, well, you could have had this, and then people get really mad when BDD has an off game. but I think like Duckdom needs to improve rapidly, or he's gonna find himself spiraling through like reading FM Korea posts every day when he gets done, and like the coaching staff isn't gonna play through him anymore. He's not gonna trust himself, and like, by the way, KT can't get hype back. We don't know the details of hype's loan, but I'm pretty sure they're not gonna get him back for the whole year, unless like the signing was only until the end of round 2, and maybe he could play in round 3. Like this isn't gonna change. KT does not have money to buy a new player. Everyone's like, but maybe they could. No, there's no one they can get. It's actually not possible. This is it, by the way. I'm telling you at home, you have Duckdom for the year. So they need to figure out how to fix it. And what they did to yesterday in the D plus series by putting casting in the middle of a series like that, I feel like you got to start casting at the beginning of the tournament. If you're thinking like Perfect isn't performing well, you think he had a Perfect had a performance related issue, like it was a performance based sub, if that's what it was, is what I'm really trying to get at, which I think seems likely it was. I don't think you want to be doing that in week 1. Now you've taken Perfect's confidence away. Casting didn't win anyways, so he's not feeling great about what happened. He doesn't feel like he got to prove himself. That don't make subs like that, KT. I'm kind of wondering like what's going on with this org right now. And interestingly, this is all happening after Hirai steps away. Like Hirai was the one who was running this ship. I feel like now he's gone. KT's making all these bizarre decisions. I don't know what's going on, but like it could get worse. Like I feel like this is the kind of team environment where you don't just go, oh, they're working on their synergy. I'm like, ooh, it's not looking good, and it feels like it's going to get worse. It reminds me of the Nongshim 2022 roster that BDD was also a part of. I'm worried because I don't think you can make big adjustments here. And if you're gonna play casting, you better be all in on that. You can't just like put him in sometimes and see what happens, because then you're hurting Perfect, and like it's things aren't gonna get better. And BDD and Cuz can't do it alone, so you got to figure out how to make these other 3 players good, or you're doomed. And right now it's looking doomed.
Well, Score's back, right? He's coaching the team now, and maybe it's just more of like back in my day, you just had to deal with it. Back in my day, there were 2 teams. There were 2 KT teams. And you just got to get used to being put in the situations. Perfect. Because Perfect has been nurtured. He's been nurtured, I think, his whole career. We're like, man, he's really nervous. Man, he's doing okay he's doing his job for a top laner, where it's like 1-1 and, 1. And it's like, good job, Perfect. You're going to let, the Deft and Pioshik and BDD and Barrel like do all the heavy lifting. You just exist. But now it's like, no, you need to do shit. And I don't mind it, especially in the top lane, if it's like, okay, Perfect, you're not doing shit. We need something. And then get him back in there. And then if he's like, my confidence is shot, you're not made for this. If that's what Score's doing, then I'm down with that.
We're kind of like past the grace period for Perfect. I do agree. I think we gave him a lot of leeway, and he had more consistent performances than Clear, for example, or Birdall. So like, we can kind of like look like those players. We were like so done with them so early.
Yeah.
It was just like, but Perfect, we were like, no, like he's mostly not running it down. He's not making super plays too often, but he's mostly not running it down. But like now you need to be crushing it, because like you said, Duckdom isn't doing it on the bottom lane. BDD's trying to get everything done by himself with a little bit of help from Cuz.
It's not even crushing it. It's just give something Cuz to play through.
The difference between Hirai as a coach and Cuz, like just to contextualize this for people, or sorry, Hirai and Score. is that like Score is a relatively new coach and is like an ex-pro gamer coach who has a lot of game knowledge, and you know, GenG benched him, basically fired him after some of the international performances they had that year. But like it was still Score's first year and took some time off. Now he's back. I feel like Score is not a veteran coach. Like he knows the game, but does he know how to mold players yet? I'm not sure. Hirai, on the other hand, was like a Coma type. Like he had Supreme doing a lot of the micromanaging, like pro gamer type. Like this is the exact strategy we're doing. Hirai was more big picture, more org guy. Like he was the guy who, I think, had a lot of input on how the roster was built and what KT is doing. I don't think Score is the type of person who's like in the business side as much as like Hirai was. And that's part of why I think like we ended up in this wacky scenario. But Score has the brain and like the knowledge because he was a player, whereas Hirai was not. Hirai is a StarCraft 2 coach. He has the knowledge of how these players think, and like some of the stresses he has as a young player, like that Perfect might be having, that Duck Dom might be having right now, because Score had some bad years. And like maybe he can pull that out of the players, but he has to be confident. He has to be like super like leadership wise, like a strong figure in the team. And I'm not sure if he's ready for that yet. I hope he is, because they fucking need it. But like, I feel like this roster could have done better with Hirai than Score, just because of their skill sets are different. But Score needs to like hone into. He needs to like be ready to give a speech. Like, I had a rough year. It was It was X year. It was tough. Like we had all these things going on. UCal was sick, and it was a problem. And like we overcame it. You too can overcome this. He has to give some speeches like that or something. Because strategically, that's not the issue. It's just players got to be better, man. That's all.
I love this angle just because you see this a lot in. I just watched the F1 documentary. I caught up with the season. There was a big turnover with like the team principals, like the ones that had the team. It's the same thing in football, soccer. Are you hiring former players that are now coaching, or are you hiring these long-term coaches? If you go down the LCK coaching staff, I think it's 50-50, because Nongshim has Chelly. I'm going down like the current standings. I can't believe Nongshim's first again. Chelly, who's been a career coach. He's mostly been a coach. D+, they've got Bengi and Pumandu, which we all know, former players who have been coaching, but this is their first big gig. GenG is the honorable Coach Kim, right? Lifelong coach. He's been coached a while. T1 has a mixture, but Coma and Tom Roach when he wasn't in military duty, so a mixture, but Coma's there. BNK Ferex is Ryu, player turned coach. DRX has Coach Song, which is what do you classify Song? Like mostly a coach.
Song is like the Hirai Coma type, like he's a strong coach. I think he has a great strategic mind for the game, but he's like he's the older guy who's like a coach and not a player. You know what I mean? Like he's the guy who's like coach oriented and not like, let me tell you about my time as a pro gamer and that's how I'm going to coach this team.
Yeah,
Fatherly
and then Dandy, Score, Edgar, world champ Edgar, and Rapid
Edgar's
Star,
in that
who's
same
been
group,
around
by the way. Yeah, Edgar's in that same group with Coma, etc.
You've got these organizations trying to make the decision what's best for us. Is it go with the younger, hands-on former player approach, or do we go with this like structured systems kind of built on experience of handling players and people from a authoritative position? We'll see what works out there.
Yeah, I think it's a really fun discussion to have, and like one that maybe we can continue to try to have a little bit more this year. Like, I think for those who, this is before your time, dGon, but you might still know, but like there was a coach called Kesman who was the Hanwha Life coach, and he was also in that like older non-pro gamer coach category, and like he was a very criticized by the global team, the global casters coach. I always really liked him, but I think for Hanwha they were like, eventually something's got to give. Like we're gonna go the pro gamer route, and they fired him, and that was the end of that. And like Hanwha after that spent some money and like pushed into the right direction. Like that was like a big turning point for the org. I think Hanwha for a while was like, Kesman can use these young talented players and maybe he'll be able to build them into something. And that was when Hanwha didn't spend money, right? When Kesman was trying to lead these budget rosters with like Karis. And it didn't work out. And then Hanwha was like, all right, spend money. We're getting Dandy. And also like Mowgli joins, and then now we're just gonna spend money and then win. And like that worked for them. But I think, Bro's still in the let's use Edgar. He's the older guy, he's the experienced one. Coach Samsung, he has a lot of experience. He's super
I got two
solid
examples of that. Two examples of that would be Probably at 100 Thieves. Did their best with that. All of a sudden, Papa Smithy comes in. Let's go get Reaper. Boom, championship. Oh wait, that happened again. Oh, okay. You know what? Let's get FlyQuest. You've been a little budgety. Let's go get World Championship winning Coach Song. Didn't quite work out, but now we've got the player coach. So he did the opposite on that one, and then got Nuke Duck. Boom, championship LCS champions. It's pretty interesting to see how like that happens. I think when a new regime comes in, it's so hard to survive. Despite the years of effort and work that you put in.
You have to have a balance. I think teams should have a balance of having that experienced older, like the Coma archetype coach, and then also like a coach like Tom or Supreme in KT's case for a while there. If you only have score, and this is like kind of where things get a little bit murky. I'm not entirely sure exactly right now with the changes to KT what the hierarchy is, but like if you only have score, then something is lost there as well. So we'll see. Anyway, I'm hoping KT bounce back. Right now, my waters are telling me, hell no, and it's going to get worse. But we'll see. We'll see, dGon. I'm hoping for BD and Cuz's sake at least.
Well, their next match is the Telecom War against KT.
It's not going to get better right there, I don't think. No, I don't.
It's not getting better there. And then they played BNK FureX. So, a little dose of the Foxes might do you good. Time for the segment I like to call a weekly dose of BROpium. We go O2 Wolf. We play D+, and then we play DN Freaks. My week was ruined because I had set up match of the week, WEAK, for the Saturday Showdown for Bros. There were all these records of BNK FureX now winning before, the fact that Morgan had never won a game against Clear. They go and win game one, and then they just shit the bed, and my day's ruined. Please tell me why. I cannot
believe, I cannot believe that they lost that game. Like the game, the LM Ivern game, like the draft cap, I'm like, it's actually not possible. It should not be possible to lose that game. And
let's frontline as a tree.
I remember the casters saying,
that isn't Maokai.
I remember the casters saying something along the lines of like, we don't normally say the draft is won or the game is won in draft, but I think a lot of people would say it about this game. I'm feeling like some people will be saying it, and all of Twitch chat is and YouTube chat is just like, it's done, it's over. I was in the chat being like, yeah, it's done, by the way. And in fact, LM had other ideas. He said it's not done. Wolf. Watch me do it. LM is a player who played on T1 and like had his huge chance there, and then owner was like, it's my spot, and then like Danny got fired, and like now we have the roster that we know is T1 today, obviously minus Zayas. And LM was one of the people alongside Cuz, by the way, fighting for that spot. And then LM went like on the world tour of playing on like bad regions teams, I'll say it, and then he came back and
I'll say.
I mean, look, he played for like Sengoku or something. Come on. So
Aze and Sengoku. Leave my Sengoku. I love them from my time over at Wild Rift. All right.
No, I love Sengoku is a great org. Great org, by the way. It's just not.
Thank you.
In League of Legends, not on Bros level even. Let's just say. So. Well, Ellen was starting over Hambach, who had some rocky performances for sure, but like was one of the better parts of Bro's roster. I was like, maybe Ellen is good again now. Like, because at the beginning of his career on T1, like he was not the best and he was not the best choice, but he was still pretty good. He was still super young in his career. And then I watched that first game he played, and I was like, why is Hambach not starting? And then I'm like, Hambach's playing in challenge. I'm like, he's still there. Like, he's not sick. You know, it just felt like a really bizarre choice from the Bro coaching staff. And I don't like, it's one of those things we won't know the answer unless Edgar at some point like speaks up about it, or like I don't know, like maybe there's like when Hambach comes back, it's like in a trash talk video or something, and he's like, yeah, I got sent back down to challengers, you know, I had some issues, but now I'm back and I worked on some stuff, whatever. I don't know. But BNK, and I say it every time, and I hate to say it, like, looks hopeless. And Bro lost to that team, man. Like, I was actually
hopeless.
I was like actually losing my mind that like that game was lost. Anyway, Vikla, remember Vikla when Vikla had 10 kills or 12 kills or some shit on Azir and couldn't, and like chased a support or something and couldn't get it done?
Yeah.
I am so like DNF, pretty disappointing. Bro, you know, they played LM, they lost to Nongship's a good team. But like lose to PK. Like, I actually still think Bro's a better team, but they didn't win. It's like how I don't know. I'm hurt. I'm hurt not because I'm a Bro fan like you, but just because like from a technical League of Legends standpoint, that should not have been possible to happen, and it happened.
In the realms of reality, that should have never happened. Thanks, Wolf. This was your your weekly dose of BROpium, fans. All right. We'll circle Friday, April 11th, Bros versus the DN Freaks. Don't tune in to D Plus versus Bro. You don't have to watch that one. I'll watch it for you. There was one more team I think I wanted to talk about. Oh, it was DRX. I think.
Yeah, DRX. All right. Rich good.
I think they're okay.
Rich good,
but
mark?
Yeah, like when Rich, see, this is why I think if Berserker joined KT, they could be a functioning team. When Rich became good, DRX is a functioning team. Like UCal brings the firepower. Sponge is doing some weird shit, but you know, like it's.
I need UCal to be 80% of the run it down energy, and I think this team actually, you know, could be a solid seventh, you know, like maybe sixth, but like probably solid seventh, where I'd be like, oh yeah, there's no way they drop a game to Bro or BNK. But like they need to. UCal is making all the plays. He's the hero. Like, we have so many mid laners this season where that's just the case, you know? And it's like, well, this guy has a ton of money and it's all up to him. But sometimes he's throwing his leads and making crazy plays that are trying to save the game. Like in that T1 series where he had the Aurora ult and he wasn't in position to catch anybody, and it was like, oh, UCal, like, no, this wasn't it. Like, after having a phenomenal laning phase and having so many sick outplays and crushing Faker early, and then just kind of like turn brain off, go in because I am hero, I make play. I need him to be like 80% of that energy, because I don't want him to lose the fire he's got in him, because he needs that to make the plays and be who he is. But like 20% of the overextending and the tossing into the bin, I would like that to stop. It's part of why DRX haven't been able to finish so many of their games, like in the series against DNF, the way that scholastically most teams would by like oppressive vision control, is because UCal is like flashing to kill the support and dying. I'm like, all right, but you're still ahead a lot. But now like the other team like gets to live for a little bit longer, and like, what are we doing?
UCal specifically needs some 2013 Cloud9, which is, once you get a kill, think what's the next thing you should do. Because once he gets a kill, he like loses control of his body and has to like scream and throw himself, and then like has to recover, and all of a sudden the 15-second window of like setting up for the next objective or pushing into something else is gone. Like you can hear it in the comms whenever he gets a kill. I can imagine just trying to set up the next play if I'm like Andil or Sponge, and being like, I can't think right now while my mid laner is yelling shit. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I feel like Teddy feels right now. Like, I feel like Teddy is probably like, politely, can you like shut the fuck up for a second? I'm trying to figure out where we're supposed to go. Like, because he's the veteran, right? Teddy's a veteran on this roster. Like, Rich, I would argue, is a MOBA veteran, right? But like, and in at this point is a veteran of League of Legends.
He's a veteran.
Like, he's played around the world. Like, you know, he's played for a really long time. But it's not like I don't mean to say that he's not a veteran, but he doesn't have accolades, right? Whereas Teddy has accomplished a lot more. I would argue. Anyways, like, if UCal is screaming and yelling and like joking, that creates that family atmosphere that I was talking about in the cast, where I'm like, oh yeah, this team has got like the vibes. But it also can be like quite distracting in a game where the game is really close and you need to figure out how to set up on the Baron, and UCal is like, let's go.
Yeah.
Hey bros, and it's like, all right, hold on, like, you know, like the term we use in English for this is clear comms, you know, like, I mean, it means like, let's talk about the game only right now, actually, by the way, because we need to focus. I feel like there's not a lot of clear comms going on in there.
So I don't think so. I think that's coachable. What I don't think is coachable, it just follow me here, right? I brought this up to Ox. Because on the bench behind DRX is the third team all-pro support vote receiver, Pleta, right? And they played against Guma and Keria, and they got blasted. Did Teddy and Ando. However, if those are the teams you're aspiring to be, and Yuka was standing up against Faker, you know, it's kind of interesting. Like, okay, you know, if we want to play that. You do have two players now on DRX that have LCK experience in a lane where you're lacking some laning firepower, some being able to stand up. Like Teddy and Ando couldn't even stand up. They were just there. They got to play when Guma and Keria told them they could play. Whereas Lazy Feel and Pleta, you know, I'm just saying, maybe you just do one, maybe you swap them both in. They've been playing together over at Asia Masters, showing off how good DRX challengers could be through the bot lane dominance. I know it's Teddy, and we talked earlier about the franchise players, mostly through the mid lane. If there is a franchise player on DRX, it would be Teddy. It is not.
Yeah.
It's not you, Kyle. But kind of like what happened to them before when the franchise player was Rascal. Like, you gotta, if the game's passing you by and there's only one certain way that you can play, and Teddy can play when it's hyper carries and everyone feeds around him and he can play Kaisa, then that's an issue. That's an issue. And I would like to just experiment a little. Just let's just see. Teddy's a veteran. He could take it. Ando played with CV Max. He can take a little benching. He'll be okay. Let's just see what happens.
Look, I for the same reason why I said I didn't really like the casting sub, I'm not on the, like, I feel like you should have started Pleta if you think he's the right person for the job. You can't just like play Ando for a week. DRX have a crushing victory over DNF and actually played close against T1 and had some big leads there against T1. Like, it was actually a really good play. Like, before the T1 GenG series, I said it on the cast, and I still believed that was my favorite series of the tournament thus far, until T1 GenG, which obviously is like the best and one of the best regular season games of all time. But if you pull Andil out after, like, yes, it wasn't like his best performance, but he looked okay here, and then Pleta bombs, then like you're doomed. You know, like, I think it's a tough call to make. I think playing Pleta first would have been the call a lot of people expected DRX to make, but didn't make, even as far back as LCK Cup. But I think I'm with you.
How long?
Pleta, round
How
3.
Long you gotta
like,
wait?
You know, I think you got to wait until round 3. Like, that's
what
I think. Maybe
split?
maybe after round 1, you could be like, all right, we've played everybody now, we've seen everything, let's give it a shot. But like, if you're gonna sub him in the middle of round 1, I feel like you have to be really confident that this is the right call. I mean, if you sub him in for one game, what's the point? If you sub, but you got to swap, you got to do a big swap. That's why I think like casting is probably not going to be starting. They just like subbed him in for one game, and I'm like, well, what are we even doing? You know, like, what's the point of this? To be like, oh, perfect, you messed up, and if you mess up, man, you could be gone. It's like, well, that doesn't seem like a healthy mindset to have. I think Andil has also been a very emotional player in the past. We've seen that through the CV Max days, that the guy does get pretty emotional especially if in losses. So I think you bench him, like he may never come back, and so you better hope that Pleta is going to be the guy, because he might have to be the guy for the rest of the year. I don't know. I think Andil he's Andil, like he's a known quantity. It's like, for me, he's like Karis, where like everyone's like, oh, is he actually really good? No, I mean, like, people aren't even saying it about Andil, but I feel like we're kind of like being like, oh, when is he going to reach his potential? For Karis, everyone's like, no, trust me, he's good. Hold on, just wait and see. I'm like, I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. For Andil, no one's saying like wait and see, but I'm like going like, I'm waiting and I'm not seeing. Whereas Pleta did seem like he had a lot more potential to grow. Like Pleta looked like his ceiling was much higher. So it is surprising, but now like I feel like we're kind of locked into Andil for a little while.
Shit. All right. Well,
I'm not saying your opinion's not valid, dGon. Like you can have.
No, I know. It's just underwhelming. It's just underwhelming to think like DRX is in a punching shot, because you said 6th, maybe 7th. I was like, who's 6th? It's normally KT or Nongshim, but KT looks like shit. The bros, I don't know, are cursed. The freaks are bad. So then it's BNK, FearX, or KT.
Maybe DRX gets 6. Yeah, maybe DRX gets 6. Right now, I feel better about them than I feel about KT. Only slightly, but I do feel slightly better. I think BDD is a better, like, BDD is the 80% UCal I was talking about, where it's like he goes in, but he doesn't go too hard. But yeah, I don't know.
I like 80%
all I know.
UCal. Try 80% UCal. Great for the body,
All I know, dGon, as we get ready to wrap this episode up, is that I'm not right now on my looking forward to watch teams. DNF, Bro, and BNK are not in the looking forward to watch teams. And KT is like on the edge of it, and that's just because I love cousin BDD. But like, BNK, get your shit together, please, bro. What is happening? You have Hambach, who you literally were playing earlier this year. This is not the Andil situation where we're like, oh man, they should play Pleta, which maybe they should, but like, it's not like they were playing Elim all year long and we're like, Hambach's over there. They played Hambach, and then they just played Elim suddenly for seemingly no reason.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Round 2 can't come quick enough. Give me Croco and I'll live and die with the Croc. There we go. All right, that is this week's episode. Hit on everything, all the big moments of the week in this historic T1 GenG series that was just awesome to watch. And I hope that, I don't know, GenG Nongshim can live up to that. And the match before it, Bro versus TNF. Thank you to all of our friends and partners for the show. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. Comment what you thought about this week's matches. And hi, FM Korea. Again, we are watching, just like you should watch next week's episode. See you later.